For today's episode, I want to start by asking you to imagine that you've been invited to this spectacular, amazing event at someone's house. It might be a party or something like that. And you arrive at their house and the front door is open and you wander on in and you keep saying hello, but there doesn't seem to be anyone around. No one actually comes to greet you at the door. And it takes you a while to figure out what's going on and you're starting to think you've broken into a stranger's house. Now, I want you to think about that because that's exactly what happens when someone joins your mailing list and you don't actually welcome them to it, right? So think about people joining your mailing list because they want to come to a webinar of yours or you've invited them to just join and get your newsletters. A welcome email or a welcome email sequence is the equivalent of meeting someone at the front door and making sure they know, yes, you're in exactly the right place and here's the lay of the land, right? Here's the layout of the party. Here's where to go to grab a drink. Here's where the bathrooms are. So in today's episode, what I want to do is walk you through how to welcome people to your mailing list in a way that's really effective and does a great job for your business. This is episode number 428 of the Heart Centre Business Podcast, which means you can find all the relevant links and the show notes for today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/428. Let's dive in. Hello, I'm Tash Corbin, a business strategist and mentor based on the Sunshine Coast in Australia. The mission of this podcast is to help heart-centered entrepreneurs to make more money and in doing so, change the world for the better. This podcast was recorded on the lands of the Gubbi Gubbi and Jinnaburra people. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. The first thing that we need to consider is how people are joining your mailing list. If most people jump onto your mailing list because they're signing up for a free resource or they're signing up for a webinar, in most cases, hopefully in all cases, each of those things that they register for is going to have its own emails that go with it. So let's say someone signs up to your mailing list to receive a free ebook that you've created. Well, you don't just send them an email and say, here's the free ebook, see you later. I would hope that you would send them a series of emails related to that ebook, and that's generally best practice. I like to send around 4 emails over the period of 10 to 14 days when someone first signs up to something. So if they've signed up to get that ebook, they might get an email straight away, here's the ebook, then an email 3 or 4 days later that says, hey, have you had a chance to check it out? Here's a couple of extra pieces of information or here's some extra depth. Then I might send another email 5 days after that asks some questions to see if there's any questions that they have or get some conversation going with them. I then might send one final email that's like just a quick reminder to go and check out that ebook if you haven't done it yet and why. And then also, if you're ready to work with me further, here's the next logical step of what we would do from here. So in most cases, if people have signed up to something to join your mailing list, they're going to already get a series of emails. And those emails more directly relate to the thing that they signed up for, which is best practice. If someone signs up to my core messaging template, which I'm going to talk about in this episode, and my freebie around how to craft a core message that does a really good job, then that tells me that what they're focused on right now is getting their core messaging sorted. So my follow-up emails to that freebie are going to be related to wanting to really nail your messaging in your business. That just makes logical sense, and that would be best practice. But how do I ensure that if it's the first time someone has joined my mailing list, that they also get that, hey, welcome from me that is actually going to make sure that they understand a little bit more about what's going on at this party, right? If we use the equivalent of the example I gave, it's the, hey, here's where the bathrooms are, here's what you're in the right place, here's what the party's about, those kinds of things. Which brings me to my gasp moment in this podcast. If you've never talked to me about welcome sequences before, and that is, I actually don't recommend you send a welcome sequence. And the reason why is because people are already going to be receiving emails from you in most cases that are more relevant to what they've signed up for anyway. So we don't want to bombard them with a bunch of other emails that are all about you. Right? When you go to someone's party, they don't welcome you in and then say, here's my living room. Here, come on a tour of my house. Here's what I like to do at parties. Here's the type of music I like to listen to. Here's my photo wall from when I went to Africa. Here's my this, here's my that, right? If you went to a party like that and the person spent the first hour of the party talking about themselves and telling you all these things about themselves and no one was interested in you and nothing was relevant to you, you wouldn't have a good time at that party, right? People don't go to parties just to hear the party host like regale everyone with story after story after story after story and not actually have a good time themselves. And that's the same with people joining your mailing list. They joined your mailing list because they thought it would be beneficial to them. They thought that there was some really good insight or a great resource that was going to help them with a particular problem they are facing. So when it comes to welcoming people onto your mailing list, I actually don't recommend adding a bunch of other emails that are talking about yourself. You've got an About Me page on your website. In most cases, like if they're really hungry to know about you and they want to see your photo wall and like they can ask questions and they can also go and check out your website. They can go out and do some exploring. Let people go and find the information that they want to find. Instead, what I recommend doing is just making sure that you are letting people understand that they're in the right place. That's most important. So I recommend one welcome email. That's it. Not a sequence, not a bunch of, introductory emails. I would say in the last 6 months, I've probably signed up to 20 or 30 people's mailing lists. And most of the welcome sequences, like 90% of the welcome sequences that I've been through were all about the person sending me the emails. And they just started to sound really narcissistic. I was bored. I stopped opening their emails. There were too many emails as well. I was getting emails about webinars and I was getting emails about the thing that they were selling on the webinar, and I was getting emails that were telling me about them and their business and how many different podcasts they'd been on and how many thousands of people trusted them and all this. It was just like, when you have someone come into a job interview, they want you to hire them, right? Which is what someone that I'm joining their mailing list, like that's what they're doing, right? They're trying to tell me or convince me that I should hire them. I should pay them some money. If you had someone walk into a job interview and they just nonstop talked and didn't even allow you to ask any questions and they just talked at you, you wouldn't hire the person. And that is honestly how I feel reading through most people's welcome sequences. There's just too many emails and they're too self-centered. It's not particularly effective. It's not particularly engaging. So what I would recommend that you do instead is just send one welcome email. Make it a little bit about you. Of course, it's lovely to get to know you a little bit, like have some humanity and be a person, right? That's totally fine. But it's far more important to me as a new subscriber to your mailing list to know, am I in the right place? What can I expect from you? And why was this a good decision for me to actually sign up to your mailing list? And you don't tell me why it's a good decision by telling me the reasons, like this was a good decision because you actually prove that it's a good decision, right? You prove that it's a good decision by making me feel like I'm in the right place. You prove that it's a good decision by being helpful, by cutting through all of that normal noisy stuff that I would normally have to wade through when I join someone's mailing list. So that is actually the structure that I would recommend for that welcome email. Now, the way that I have it set up is that in my system, whenever someone signs up for a resource or buys a product or joins my mailing list in any way, regardless of where they've come from, I have it set up in my system that if that email address has not been registered with my system before, they get an email 1 hour later, and that email is my welcome email. So if someone's already on my mailing list and they sign up for a webinar, they don't get my welcome email. They get the emails related to the webinar. They're already on my list. If someone joins my mailing list and this is their first time, then they literally get an email from me an hour after they've joined my mailing list, and it says, according to my systems, this is your first time on my mailing list. So I thought I'd reach out and send you this little welcome email. So I'm even just like letting them know from the outset, like the reason why you're getting this is because I think this might be your first time on my mailing list. And so that's really helpful to sort of establish, like, this is just a once off just because it's your first time here. And I want to make sure that I introduce myself and that you understand like what to expect from here. And so the structure that I recommend for that email is something like that. Explain why they're receiving the email. Let them know what to expect from you from here. So it might be I send out my newsletter roughly every week, and in that I share with you my latest feature piece of content, some tips and ideas on how you can XYZ, whatever the main big outcome is of working with you or your core messaging. And you might even say, and I'll let you know about events and extra opportunities for us to work together from time to time, something like that. So you're just keeping it nice and clear about what they can expect from you. Now, something that I say in my welcome email is, I just want to let you know, I am a content creating machine. I love creating content and helping people, and I have 1,000 things that I want to say every minute. But by being on my mailing list, you'll make sure that you never miss the important stuff. So I will do Facebook Lives and I will share content on social media, and I have a podcast that I record every week. And I also, will often come up with last minute events and ideas and all sorts of stuff. By being on my mailing list, you'll know and be able to trust that if you read my emails, you won't have missed out on anything important. So that's in essence telling people that they're in the right place, but also like, I'm not going to make you chase me around the internet in case you miss out on something. All the best stuff comes to people on my mailing list, right? But I haven't used those words because those words I think are a little bit overused, and often it's very lip service. So I don't say things like, oh, only people on my mailing list get all the best of me or da-da-da-da. No, I just share that I can't help myself. I go live on Facebook pretty much every week, if not multiple times per week. And I understand that chasing Tash around the internet and trying to watch every little piece of video content that she creates and listen to all her podcasts and blah, 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 like catch everything that I share in all the different spaces, that can be really challenging. And so if you read my email each week, that's where you're going to know that you get the very best of that information. And whatever I've shared that, if it's particularly important or I think it's going to be helpful, I'll make sure I let you know because you're on my mailing list. So that's kind of the what to expect, yeah? I also think that you should include in that welcome email just a little bit about like why it's a good decision, but through the lens of like, what is the core thing that you help people with? Now, that can be really tricky for a lot of people, and I understand that not everyone has their core messaging really nailed. So that's why I said it earlier in the episode. I will link in the show notes of today's episode at tashcorbin.com/428. I actually have a free resource that helps you work through this and get really clear on what exactly is your core message here that you need to share. What is the core, like substantive piece of work that you do, the transformation that you facilitate, so that you can express and share that with your audience. And a really important place to share that is in this welcome email. So if you're unclear or unsure how to express that, the core messaging free resource is a great place for you to go and get that sorted. So I'll link over on the show notes to that free resource for you. So things like being really clear, like what is it that you actually help people to achieve? What are the main struggles that you help people to overcome? What is the, in essence, value proposition? What is the benefit of someone following you online and being in your orbit? Now, I also do think it can be helpful to let people know how they can work with you, particularly in the early stages of your business. If you're just focused on working with people one-on-one, then letting people know that the main way people work with me is through my VIP packages or one-on-one consultations. And if that's something that you're looking for help with, then make sure that you reply and let me know so that you can actually generate some leads from that welcome email. That can be really helpful. But I do want to say that for most of you, people are going to sign up to a specific freebie, and that freebie is going to have an upsell. So it can do that. It can do that upselling job. It would be far, far, far more effective and far more important to the growth of your business, I think, to get people to reply to your welcome email and actually tell you a bit about themselves in the context of the work that you do. So my welcome email, because I work with people who have online businesses or an idea for an online business, literally says 3 times, I love hearing about everyone's different businesses. So please reply and tell me about your business. What is it that you're doing? Where are you stuck? I say it in different ways, but in that email, I have the same call to action 3 times. And that call to action is reply. I tell people I love getting replies and I read their replies because a lot of people don't like getting replies to their business emails. And I'm different in that way. So that's something that I make it really clear. But I would love for you to think about in your welcome email, what would be one of the most effective questions or pieces of information that you could ask your audience to give. So if, let's say, you're a parenting expert and that's something that you specifically help people with, is it more helpful for someone to reply and tell you how many kids they've got? Or is it actually more helpful if you get them to reply with like, what's your biggest challenge with parenting your child in the way that you really want to? Or who in your life most interferes with you parenting in the way that you want to, and how do they interfere, right? And it's actually starting a conversation. That's lead generation. That's nurturing a one-to-one relationship with individuals who've signed up to your mailing list. And I have hundreds and hundreds of people sign up to my mailing list each month. And I get probably 30 or 40 replies to my welcome email each month. And I have the time to read everyone's replies and I love getting them and I reply to their replies. And so that's still a very good use of my time, even at this stage of my business and this size of business. I see a lot of people when they are thinking about email marketing and they're thinking about emailing their mailing list, really hesitant to ask their mailing list questions or encourage their mailing list to reply to them because they're worried, like, what if I get too many replies? What if I get overwhelmed? I already have too many emails in my inbox. Well, I would say, let's say you're getting 100 emails a day. And I would guess 90% of those emails are newsletters or spam or like things that you've signed up for in the past and you're not actually working with the person or whatever it might be, right? What if you unsubscribed from 50 of those newsletters and had 5 potential clients, 5 people who've joined your mailing list each week, replying to your emails and actually telling you something interesting or useful, or whether they're a lead of yours or not. You know, I think people prioritize the wrong stuff in their businesses a lot of the time. The more one-to-one conversations you can have with people within your niche and who are potential clients and who are within your audience, the more insight you get as to what messaging and what content is going to be the most effective, and the more leads you will actually generate in your business, therefore the more sales you'll have in your business. The number of people you're having one-on-one conversations with about your work is a direct correlation to the number of clients you'll end up having. That is a direct relationship between those two things, lead generation and clients. They are like directly related in terms of numbers. The number of people on your mailing list and the number of sales you make, not directly related. So I'm not making 10 times the number of sales now with a list of over 10,000 people as I did when I had 1,000 people on my mailing list. In fact, I would say when I had 1,000 people on my mailing list, I actually made like maybe only 20 or 30% less in sales in terms of number of clients, because the percentage of my mailing list who replied to my emails back then was a lot higher because I encouraged it so much and I generated a lot of leads out of a very small mailing list. Now, these days, my mailing list is still minuscule compared to most big businesses, but my conversion percentage and my lead generation percentage is huge. And I think one of the core reasons why that is because when people come to my party at my front door, I'm there welcoming them in. And not only that, I'm telling them I want to have a conversation with them while they're here at my party. I actually want to get to know them one-on-one as a human being. And not just because the more people that I know one-on-one as human beings, the more sales I make, but also because I genuinely want to know who's signing up to my list, and I genuinely want to create connections and relationships with those people because I'm genuinely interested in what people want and what they're doing and what kinds of businesses they're starting. So that is my hot take on how to welcome people onto your mailing list. I don't recommend a welcome sequence for the general people joining your mailing list, just one welcome email, but make it a really lovely one. And be mindful about how much time and attention span you will have from people to read that email. But give it a go and experiment, potentially include a photo of yourself, include a little bit of info about who you are, but be really mindful, like what is going to be really useful and valuable and helpful to someone who has just come to your party, who has just joined your mailing list. What are they most going to want to know? And I think the other thing is just like, remember that you're going to have lots and lots of opportunities to email them. You don't have to jam everything into this one email. It's that giving people a little bit of depth of understanding of what's going on and what to expect, and maybe, the types of things you're interested in learning about them. And just remember that in your newsletters, in the emails that follow up from your freebies and opt-ins or however they've joined your list, all of that other stuff, you've got time to develop that relationship. You've got time to share all the information you want to share with them. But just focus on like what's going to be most helpful for them in this particular moment. What's going to feel the most engaging for them, and create that depth of connection and that engagement with them in that way. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Heart Centre Business Podcast. Don't forget to go and grab that core messaging free resource over at tashcorbin.com/428. And until next time, I cannot wait to see you shine. Bye for now.